All right, fellow UPSC aspirants, welcome back for part 2 of our daily deep dive into current affairs. It's March 5th, 2025.
Yes, welcome back.
We've got another set of news to unpack. You might have already encountered some of these while you were studying, but think of this as a good revision session. And if you want to keep up with all the latest developments, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's jump into it. Today, we're looking at India's booming biofuel industry, some interesting findings about women borrowers, a potential game changer in nuclear energy, and some urban planning paradoxes. Ready to dive in?
Let's dive in.
Okay, first up, let's talk about biofuels. India just hit a big milestone, becoming the world's third largest biofuel producer.
That's right.
We've also hit 19.6% ethanol blending in petrol, ahead of schedule.
This is huge, right?
Yes, very significant.
It's not just a number, though, right?
No, it really shows a shift in India's energy strategy.
Yeah.
Biofuels are a key part of the plan to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, cut down on CO2 emissions, and strengthen our energy security. It's all about a sustainable future for India. Exactly. And it's not just about replacing petrol with ethanol. We're talking about a whole range of biofuels, from the ethanol we get from sugarcane to advanced biofuels made from algae or even genetically modified organisms. It's like biofuel 2.0.
Precisely. And that's because we need sustainability and better efficiency. First-generation biofuels, while renewable, can compete with land use and food production.
Right.
These advanced biofuels aim to get around those issues by using things like agricultural residues, algae, even waste materials. We're talking about making the most of what we have while being mindful of the environmental impact.
Makes sense. But are there any challenges, any roadblocks we need to be aware of?
Well, every big change has its hurdles.
Yeah.
Securing a steady supply of feedstock, scaling up those production technologies to make them commercially viable, getting enough funding, those are just a few bumps in the road.
Yeah, I see.
But India is addressing these challenges head-on through a multi-pronged approach. We have initiatives like the National Policy on Biofuels 2018, the Pradhan Mantri Javan Yojana, Gubardhan, and the Satat scheme. All these show how committed we are to overcoming these obstacles and moving the biofuel sector forward.
It's like we have a toolkit to tackle those challenges. Now, switching gears to a report that really caught my eye, it's called From Borrowers to Builders. It highlights a big jump in the number of women borrowers in India. It's tripled between 2019 and 2024. That's phenomenal, right? What does this tell us?
Yeah, it's definitely a positive sign. It shows that more women are participating in the formal financial system.
Right.
And that's a crucial step toward financial inclusion and empowerment. The report says 60% of these borrowers are from semi-urban or rural areas, which shows how far these financial inclusion initiatives are reaching.
That's great to hear. But is this trend uniform across India, or are there variations depending on the region?
That's a good point. The report does mention regional differences. Southern states generally have more women borrowers compared to the north and central regions. This could be because of social norms, different levels of financial literacy, even the effectiveness of specific financial inclusion programs in each area. It's important to understand these differences to find solutions that work for each region.
So one size doesn't fit all? But even with this growth, I imagine there are still challenges for women who want to access credit.
Absolutely.
What are some of those challenges?
There are deep-rooted social norms that can create a barrier, making women hesitant to seek loans or make independent financial decisions. Many women, especially those who may not fully understand finances, might be scared of taking on debt. They're worried about the possibility of defaulting. And then there are the practical hurdles, like complicated application forms and a lack of support from traditional financial institutions. These all play a part in the hesitancy we see.
It sounds like a mix of social, psychological, and practical obstacles. How can we address these effectively? How do we create a truly level playing field for women borrowers?
Well, the report has some good suggestions. It's essential to expand access to business loans specifically for women.
Yeah.
And we also need to tailor financial products to better suit women's needs and their life cycles. Rethinking how we assess credit risk is important too, moving away from criteria that might be biased against women. Finally, and this is crucial, we need to empower women with financial literacy and business skills. These initiatives can help build an environment where women can confidently access credit and thrive as entrepreneurs and financial decision makers.
It's more than just giving them loans. It's about empowering them to make financial decisions. Now let's jump into the world of nuclear energy.
Okay.
We're going to talk about a potential game changer called thorium.
Right.
A recent geological survey from China, which has just been declassified, revealed massive thorium reserves. These reserves are big enough to potentially change the global energy landscape.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, so tell us, what is thorium and why should we care?
So thorium is a radioactive element that's found naturally, and it's actually more abundant than uranium. You'll find it in small amounts in most rocks and soils, with the highest concentrations in a mineral called monazite. Now, thorium itself can't be used directly as fuel. It needs to be converted into uranium-233 through a process called irradiation. But what makes it so exciting is its potential for safety and sustainability.
So how does it compare to uranium as a fuel source for nuclear power?
That's the big question. One of the biggest advantages is that thorium reactors are believed to produce far less long-lived radioactive waste compared to the conventional uranium reactors. This means we have much less to worry about in terms of long-term disposal, which is a big challenge with nuclear energy right now. Also, thorium is less likely to be used for weapons, which makes it a safer choice from a geopolitical point of view.
So cleaner, safer, and more sustainable. That's significant for nuclear energy. Where does India fit into all of this?
Well, this is where India has a bit of an advantage. We have the largest thorium reserves in the world. While the technology for large-scale thorium reactors is still in development, this puts India in a good position to be a leader in the future of nuclear energy.
It sounds like we're on the brink of a potential energy revolution. Now, let's shift our focus to another area where India is making strides: wildlife conservation.
Okay.
The 7th meeting of the National Board for Wildlife, chaired by the Prime Minister himself, resulted in some important decisions and new initiatives. Can you walk us through the key points?
Sure. For the first time, we have a full report on the estimation of riverine dolphins in India. The report estimates over 6,000 dolphins across our rivers, with the highest numbers in Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal, and Assam. This is a big step forward in our efforts to protect these endangered creatures.
That's fascinating. I had no idea we had so many river dolphins. What other significant decisions came out of the meeting?
Well, there was a strong focus on using advanced technology to support conservation efforts. The Prime Minister specifically mentioned using things like remote sensing and AI to tackle problems like forest fires and human-wildlife conflict.
So technology is changing the game, even in wildlife conservation. Can you give us some examples of how this technology is being used?
Definitely. We're using remote sensing with satellites and aerial platforms to map habitats, monitor deforestation, track animal movements, and even spot poaching activities. Artificial intelligence helps us analyze large amounts of data, identify patterns, and predict possible threats to wildlife. And then we have camera traps with motion sensors and infrared capabilities. These capture images of elusive animals and give us valuable information about their behavior and population dynamics.
It's like we're giving our conservation efforts a technological boost, making them more efficient and data-driven. Very impressive. Were there any specific announcements regarding conservation plans?
Yes, there were. They announced plans for the 16th Asiatic lion population estimation in 2025. Also, expanding cheetah introduction projects to new sanctuaries, a national plan for great Indian bustard conservation, and a new project focused on gharial conservation. On top of that, they're going to establish a national referral center for wildlife in Junagadh, focusing on wildlife health and disease management.
Okay.
And a new center of excellence dedicated to managing human-wildlife conflict will be set up at the Salim Ali Center for Ornithology and Natural History in Coimbatore. All these are important steps toward a more complete and effective way of protecting India's biodiversity.
It's good to see such a multifaceted approach to conservation. Now let's move on to a topic that might seem a bit paradoxical at first: urban planning. Specifically, we're going to look at Bengaluru's plans for tunnel roads and double-decker roads.
This actually relates to an interesting concept known as Brace's paradox.
Okay.
It suggests that sometimes adding more to a network, like building more roads, can actually worsen congestion.
Wait, that doesn't seem logical. How can adding roads create more traffic?
It might sound counterintuitive, but it all comes down to how people behave in the system. When individuals make decisions based on what they think is fastest for themselves, adding more capacity can disrupt the existing flow and actually make travel times longer for everyone. It's a prime example of how individual rationality can sometimes lead to inefficiency for the whole group.
That's really interesting. It challenges the idea that more roads always mean less traffic. So how does this paradox apply to urban planning, especially in a city like Bengaluru that's growing so quickly?
It highlights that we need a smarter, more nuanced way of thinking about urban mobility. Simply constructing more roads won't solve the problem. We need to move beyond just focusing on cars
Right.
and prioritize other forms of transportation.
So it's not just about creating space for vehicles. It's about rethinking how people move around the city. What are some things we can do to tackle this challenge?
Improving public transport is crucial. Investing in efficient, affordable, and reliable systems like metro networks, bus rapid transit, and light rail can encourage people to use them instead of their cars.
So making public transport the preferred option, not just a backup. What else can we do to ease congestion and create a better environment for people in cities?
Well, we can encourage walking and cycling,
Okay.
creating pedestrian-friendly streets, dedicated bike lanes, and safe, well-lit pathways encourages people to be active. This reduces traffic while promoting health and well-being. And it's also important to connect land use and transportation planning. Designing cities where people live, work, and relax in close proximity reduces the need for long commutes, minimizing traffic and improving the quality of life.
It's fascinating how something as seemingly straightforward as urban planning can be so complex. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's touch on a few other developments from March 5th.
Sounds good.
Those 2 new jumping spider species discovered in Kerala's Shendurni Wildlife Sanctuary definitely caught my attention. It reminds us of India's amazing biodiversity and how there's still so much to discover.
Definitely. And then there's the start of the trial incineration of waste connected to the 1984 Bhopal gas tragedy. This is a major step in addressing a long-standing environmental and social issue.
Absolutely. And on the tech front, the Advanced Research Center for Powder Metallurgy and New Materials, or RRCI, showcased a mobile PEMFC-based backup power solution for telecom towers. This could be a game changer, especially for ensuring connectivity in remote areas. Can you explain what a PEMFC is for those who might not be familiar?
Sure. PEMFC stands for Proton Exchange Membrane Fuel Cell.
Okay.
It's essentially a hydrogen-powered battery that produces zero emissions, making it perfect for clean and efficient backup power. It has the potential to replace those polluting diesel generators.
That's incredible. Innovation at its best. Meanwhile, on the political front, Prime Minister Modi visited the Somnath Temple in Gujarat, a site with significant cultural and religious importance.
And internationally, the U.S. president announced the creation of a crypto-strategic reserve, a move that's causing excitement and debate in the world of digital assets.
Back in India, they've launched pilot projects using hydrogen-powered buses and trucks as part of the National Green Hydrogen Mission. This marks another step towards a cleaner transport sector.
Right.
And the Indian Railway Catering and Tourism Corporation, or IRCTC, and the Indian Railway Finance Corporation, or IRFC, have been granted Navratna status. This shows how much they've contributed to the Indian economy.
That's right.
Finally, we should remember the death anniversary of Lala Hardayal, a prominent figure in India's freedom struggle whose contributions are often overlooked.
Indeed.
That concludes part 1 of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground and we've got more to unpack. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve deeper into these important topics.
Welcome back, everyone, to part 2 of our UPSC Current Affairs deep dive for March 5th, 2025. We're picking up right where we left off, so if you haven't caught part 1 yet, go back and give it a listen.
Right, we're going even deeper into the topics that matter most for your UPSC preparation. And
Yeah.
remember, you might have already come across some of these in your studies, so this is a fantastic revision session.
Exactly, revisiting those key concepts. And speaking of key concepts, let's go back to biofuels for a moment. We touched on the different generations of biofuels, from the ethanol we get from food crops to those derived from algae or even genetically modified organisms.
Right, it's like a biofuel family tree with each generation building on the one before it.
Yeah.
But what's pushing this evolution? Why the focus on these advanced biofuels?
It comes down to, well, 2 things, really. Sustainability and efficiency. Those first-generation biofuels, while renewable, they can end up competing with things like food production and how we use our land.
Right.
Advanced biofuels try to address these concerns by using, things that aren't food sources. We're talking agricultural residues, algae, even waste materials. It's about using what we have wisely and minimizing the impact on the environment.
So it's not just about finding any alternative fuel, it's about making sure those alternatives are as sustainable and efficient as possible. Smart. Now, what about the initiatives that are driving biofuel growth in India?
Oh, absolutely. We already mentioned the National Policy on Biofuels 2018, which aims to create the right environment for biofuel production and blending. And then you have the Pradhan Mantri Drive-in Yojana, which specifically focuses on promoting second-generation ethanol, the kind that's derived from non-food sources. Gobardhan, as the name suggests, is all about, well, turning waste into wealth. It promotes using cow dung and other organic waste to produce biogas. And lastly, the SATAT scheme incentivizes setting up compressed biogas, CBG plants, which further diversifies India's biofuel options.
Oh, so we have a policy framework, programs for specific types of biofuels, and initiatives focused on utilizing waste. It seems like India is really taking a well-rounded approach to boosting biofuel adoption. Impressive. Now let's get back to that report on the rise of women borrowers in India. We talked about the impressive growth, but are there any major differences between states?
You're right to ask that. The report does point out some regional variations. Southern states tend to have a higher proportion of women borrowers compared to the north and central parts of the country. Now, this could be due to a few things: differences in social norms, varying levels of financial literacy, and how effectively those financial inclusion initiatives are being implemented in different regions. It's important to understand these nuances if we want to design effective policies.
It's like we need to look at the details, not just the national trends. Now, let's delve into the apprehensions some women feel towards formal loans, something the report highlighted. What are the root causes of this hesitancy, and how can we address it?
Well, there are a few layers to this. Societal norms often dictate that women, particularly in certain communities, shouldn't be burdened with financial responsibilities or involved in making independent financial decisions. This can create a mental block that prevents them from even thinking about formal credit.
So it's not just about access, it's about empowering women to take charge of their financial lives. Are there other factors at play here?
Definitely. Many women worry about the possibility of defaulting, especially those who might not have a strong understanding of financial matters. They might be afraid of taking loans because of the potential consequences if they can't repay them. On top of that, those application processes can be complicated, and some women feel like traditional financial institutions aren't very understanding of their situations. All of this contributes to the hesitancy we see.
So it's a combination of social conditioning, fear, and those practical barriers. Sounds like a multi-pronged approach is needed here as well.
Exactly. It's crucial to improve financial literacy among women when they have the knowledge and skills to understand credit, manage finances, and make informed decisions. It can give them the confidence they need and reduce apprehension. We also need to design financial products and services that actually meet the needs of women. Things like flexible repayment options, collateral requirements that take into account women's limited asset ownership, and simpler application processes can make a big difference.
It's about building a financial system that truly works for women. Now let's circle back to thorium for a bit. We talked about the advantages it has over uranium, but I'm curious about the practical side of things. What types of reactors can actually use thorium as a fuel source?
That's a good question. The technology for thorium-based reactors is still developing, but there are several reactor designs being explored. Heavy water reactors, PHWRs, similar to those operating in India already, can be modified to use thorium. Pressurized light water reactors, PWRs, which are common globally, also have potential for thorium utilization. Molten salt reactors, MSRs, are a more advanced experimental design, but they're especially well suited for thorium. They have inherent safety features and could be even more efficient.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Different designs offer different ways to harness thorium's potential. With India's vast reserves and expertise in nuclear technology, what are the prospects for thorium-based energy here?
India has a unique opportunity to lead the way in thorium energy. Our government has been actively involved in research and development in this area for decades now. The three-stage nuclear power program, envisioned by Dr. Homi Bhabha, outlines a clear plan for utilizing thorium, eventually leading to the development of breeder reactors that can produce more fuel than they consume. Large-scale deployment of thorium-based reactors is still a few years away, but India's commitment to this technology is strong.
It's a long-term vision, but the potential benefits in energy security, reducing carbon emissions, and technological advancement are huge. Now, let's go back to the 7th meeting of the National Board for Wildlife. We discussed several key decisions, but I want to focus on the emphasis on using technology for conservation. How exactly is technology being used to protect India's biodiversity?
Technology is revolutionizing how we approach wildlife conservation. Remote sensing, using satellites and aerial platforms, helps us map habitats, monitor deforestation, track how animals move, and even detect poaching. Artificial intelligence is used to analyze tons of data, find patterns, and predict potential threats to wildlife. Camera traps equipped with motion sensors and infrared capabilities help us capture images of those hard-to-find creatures, giving us valuable insights into their behavior and populations. These are just a few examples of how technology is transforming the way we protect our natural heritage.
It's like giving conservation efforts a 21st century upgrade, making them more efficient and data-driven. Now, let's look at a specific example. The first ever report on estimating riverine dolphin populations. How did technology play a role in this effort?
Technology was essential in creating this report. Acoustic surveys, which use underwater microphones to listen for dolphin clicks and whistles, gave us data on their distribution and abundance. Visual surveys, done from boats and along riverbanks, added to that data, letting researchers identify individual dolphins and check their health. Geographic Information Systems, or GIS, were used to map dolphin habitats, analyze environmental factors that affect their distribution, and identify potential threats. This combination of acoustic, visual, and spatial data, all made possible by technology, allowed for a reliable and accurate estimation of riverine dolphin populations across India.
It really shows how powerful technology can be in helping us understand and protect even the most elusive creatures. Now, before we wrap up this part, let's touch upon that intriguing braces paradox in urban planning. We talked about how adding more roads can sometimes make congestion worse, but what about solutions? How can urban planners work around this paradox and design cities that are both efficient and livable?
That's the big question, isn't it? Brace's paradox tells us that we need a fundamental change in how we approach urban planning. We need to move away from designs that just focus on cars and embrace a more holistic, sustainable approach. Improving public transportation is key. Investing in systems that are efficient, affordable, and reliable, like metro networks, bus rapid transit, and light rail, can encourage people to choose those options instead of their cars.
So it's about making public transport the go-to choice. What else can we do?
Encouraging walking and cycling is another important step. Creating streets that are pedestrian-friendly with dedicated bike lanes and pathways that are safe and well-lit can encourage people to be more active. This reduces traffic and promotes a healthier lifestyle. And we need to connect land use and transportation planning. If we design cities where people live, work, and play close to each other, it reduces the need for those long commutes. That, in turn, minimizes traffic and improves the quality of life for everyone.
It's amazing how something as simple as encouraging walking and cycling can have a significant impact on a city.
Okay, we've covered a lot in this part. Before we move on to the final section of our deep dive, let's quickly touch upon some other notable developments from March 5th that are relevant for your UPSC preparation.
Sounds good. What else caught your eye?
Well, those two new jumping spider species discovered in Kerala's Shandurni Wildlife Sanctuary are definitely noteworthy. It's a great reminder of just how much biodiversity India has and that there are still new discoveries to be made.
Absolutely. And then we have the start of the trial incineration of waste from the 1984 Bhopal gas tragedy, a long-awaited step toward addressing that tragic event.
Yes, that's an important development. And on the technology front, RRCI showcasing that mobile PEMFC-based backup power solution for telecom towers is very promising. It could be a game changer for reliable connectivity, especially in remote areas.
Definitely. It shows how innovation can solve some of our toughest challenges. Now, looking at the political landscape, Prime Minister Modi's visit to the Somnath Temple in Gujarat is significant, considering the temple's cultural and religious importance.
And on the international front, the U.S. president's announcement of a crypto strategic reserve is a move that will definitely have an impact on the world of digital assets.
Back in India, those pilot projects with hydrogen-fueled buses and trucks under the National Green Hydrogen Mission are a positive step toward a cleaner transport sector.
Right.
And IRCTC and IRFC getting the Ratna status is a recognition of their contributions to the Indian economy.
Absolutely.
Finally, we should remember the death anniversary of Lala Hardayal, a key figure in India's freedom struggle. His legacy deserves more attention.
Indeed. His contributions to the independence movement were crucial.
All right, that concludes part 2 of our deep dive into the current affairs of March 5th, 2025. Ready for the final part?
Let's go.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into current affairs, fellow UPSC aspirants. It's March 5th, 2025, and if you've been with us for parts 1 and 2, you're already well-versed in the major events shaping India and the world. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with all the latest developments. Let's wrap up our analysis with some final insights and food for thought.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot of ground, but there are still some interesting points to explore.
Before we dive into those, I want to go back to the discovery of those 2 new jumping spider species in Kerala's Shandurni Wildlife Sanctuary. It really highlights the incredible biodiversity we have in India. New discoveries are still happening all the time. What makes a discovery like this so significant?
Well, it shows us how much we still have to learn about our ecosystems. The Western Ghats, where Shandurni Wildlife Sanctuary is located, is known for its rich biodiversity, but finding these new jumping spider species just emphasizes that there are probably many more undiscovered species out there, even in places we think we've studied well.
It's like a hidden world of biodiversity right here in India. Now, let's talk about Prime Minister Modi's visit to the Somnath Temple in Gujarat. Can you tell us a bit about the historical and cultural significance of this temple?
The Somnath Temple has a very rich history and plays a vital role in Hindu mythology. It's believed to be one of the 12 Jyotirlinga shrines, which are dedicated to Lord Shiva. And its location, at the Triveni Sangam, the meeting point of three sacred rivers, the Kapila, Hiran, and Saraswati, makes it a very holy place. The temple has been destroyed and rebuilt multiple times throughout history, a testament to its importance and the enduring faith it represents.
It's a powerful symbol of heritage and resilience. Now let's shift gears to technology and innovation. We discussed RCI showcasing that mobile PEMFC-based backup power solution for telecom towers. Can you explain what PEMFC is and why this innovation is so promising?
Sure, PEMFC stands for Proton Exchange Membrane Fuel Cell. Essentially, it's like a battery powered by hydrogen, but it produces zero emissions. This makes it great for providing clean and reliable backup power, especially in places where the power grid might not be so stable. This technology could replace those old diesel generators, which are big polluters.
So it's a clean, efficient, and portable solution. What other potential uses do you see for this technology?
Oh, the possibilities are endless, really. We talked about telecom towers, but imagine its potential in remote areas, disaster relief, or even as a way to power electric vehicles. PEMSCs could really change the way we transition to a more sustainable energy future.
It's exciting to think about the impact these innovations can have.
Yeah.
Now let's zoom in on the U.S. President's announcement of a crypto strategic reserve. This has been generating a lot of buzz. Can you explain what a crypto strategic reserve is and why it matters?
A crypto strategic reserve is basically a national stockpile of digital assets, kind of like how countries have strategic reserves of oil or gold. The idea is to have a buffer against financial risks and to diversify their holdings, recognizing that cryptocurrencies are becoming more and more